Hi, my name is K.Thomas, W1DED. We're just a few days past the close of the 2024 WPX single sideband contest. During that contest, I became really intrigued by what I'll call contest DXpeditions, hams that I know and some that I don't know that have traveled in particular to the Caribbean to operate the contest. During my researching of that topic, I came across Dr. Bill Schmidt, Kilo 9 Hotel Zulu, who actually has a station on St. Lucia where he operates as J68HZ, and you can also rent that contest station. Bill's here from St. Lucia today. Thanks for joining me, Bill.
Thanks, Kevin. I appreciate it.
So thanks for interrupting your time away on St. Lucia. I feel very guilty. Just so you know, with a little perspective, we're having a major winter storm here, so hopefully the internet doesn't go out, but everything is closed down in Maine. I just got back from St. Vincent, so I can totally relate to what you're experiencing right now. We had 82 degrees, sun all week long, but again, thank you for interrupting your time.
Oh, no problem. It's beautiful here, by the way. A little bit of rain today, but otherwise it's just beautiful.
Whatever possessed you to decide that you wanted a ham radio station in the middle of the Caribbean, away from your home QTH?
Okay, let me first start out by saying that this entire story that I'm about to tell you is in NCJ, January, February of 2021. So if the viewers want to go out there and read the whole story, they can do that. My wife and I started coming to the Caribbean about 20 years ago, and we would bounce back and forth between islands. And every time we went to a new island, I would bring my radio equipment with, and it got more sophisticated as time went on. It went from, just a handy talkie to dragging a ICOM 765 in a Pelican case with dipoles to bringing a portable 3-element beam. But jumping back and forth between the islands, and we found ourselves always coming back to St. Lucia because of the, number one, the people, but number two, the lush greenness, the mountain, the mountainous terrain and the lush green around us. We absolutely love it here. And we decided eventually to, become essentially permanent residents here. We decided to come here for our retirement. I think we're in the process of building a retirement home here.
So you traveled throughout the Caribbean. Sounds like you traveled with ham radio equipment. So you also had a sense, I suppose, of licensing, propagation, various working conditions. Did the ham radio piece of it weigh in on your decision where you wanted your retirement home?
Yeah, it certainly did. And my wife, bless her heart, she made allowances for that. So we tried to look for a place that would support my ham radio hobby for me, and for her, it would support her, being able to dive and being close to nature. We went to several places, Grand Cayman, Turks and Caicos, Curacao, St. Kitts, and all the islands south of St. Lucia, St. Martin, Barbados. They're all wonderful islands, but I think the best combination for us turned out to be St. Lucia in the end.
And when you were traveling through the Caribbean with your ham radio gear, were you operating casually, or did you do some contests during that time?
Well, most of the time when I was traveling, I was just casually operating, just DXing. I did participate in a couple of contests myself, by myself. Once in a while, maybe 2 contests in the last 20 years. But I also had the opportunity to contest at some of the bigger stations in the Caribbean, and we can talk about that too.
So let's get into St. Lucia. So you've been there now for several years. Did you put a ham radio station in right away?
Well, so we've owned property here for about 10 years, and I left equipment here right after we bought our place here, and I would set up portable antennas for the first 5 years, and they got to be pretty sophisticated. So it got to the point where we really I needed to do something else if I wanted to take the station forward. So we bought the land surrounding us, which includes a piece of property up above the main villa that we bought, and we also own some properties down below. and I started putting up antennas on that. So back in 2018, I finally put the big tower up. Big. It's only 60 feet. You're only allowed to have a tower 60 feet tall here on the island. But I put the first tower up, and then we've been putting up other towers and other beams, to kind of complement that situation.
So, Bill, I think a lot of us can relate to, you start off with a piece of gear or a portable antenna, and it just keeps growing from there. So I presume part of your process was setting up this portable antenna, operating, and then realizing, I'd like to have something bigger and better so I can get a greater reach. Is that what happened with you?
Yeah, pretty much. I had, a portable 3-element beam and a 500-watt KPA 500 amplifier. And that does okay, and I could contest with it. Jumping to other contest stations in the, strictly contest stations in the Caribbean. I mean, I just couldn't compete with the likes of those guys. So that's what prompted me to put up the big antennas. And by contest standards, this is a fairly modest station. But because of where we're situated and the type of propagation that we see, we can always place in the top 5 in any contest.
So get into the details of what exactly you have there now. You've mentioned 60-foot tower, which I believe is on the top of a ridge, at least, if not a hill. But what else do you have there specifically?
Okay, so as you said, the main tower is up on the top of a mountain. It's actually up on a ridge, 600 feet up above the ocean, and it's a 45-degree angle takeoff, down to the ocean. I've got a Step IR DB42 5-element up at 60 feet. I've got a 2-meter antenna, big long boom 2-meter antenna above that, and I've done some long path messaging between myself and likes of D4C and South Africa. So some of those are close to records. I also have a 4-element Step IR antenna at about 35 feet on the main tower now, and that's pointed right now at the United States, but I'm in the process of putting up a tick ring so that we can move that back and forth between Europe and the United States. We don't have any problems working South America, really, even off the side of the beams, because we're so close. And it's the U.S., Europe, and Africa that are the challenges for us.
So I presume with that tower location being on top of a mountain, you've got a free and clear shot in every direction. Is that accurate?
Pretty much. I think we're blocked a little bit to the east, so a little bit to Africa, but because of the takeoff angles of the antenna from the modeling that I've done, we make it over the mountains that are right beside us. But yes, I've got a clear takeoff to the United States, to Europe, and and south of me, as you probably found out.
So before we move inside the shack and learn what you have for equipment, I guess I'm curious about actually finding the property you found. You have the personal considerations. You want your wife to be happy, and you want her to be able to dive. You obviously have a home that you kind of envision for yourself. But then when you factor in height and a clear shot around the world, proximity to the water, that must have taken some time to find the right property.
Well, it really did. And there just aren't that many properties on this island where you get some sort of 360-degree, radio ability. Most of the places are built on the west side of the island, and they do that for so that the wind comes from the east, the westerly winds, of course, and when hurricanes come through here, they always come from the east. So you're protected a little bit being on the west side. And I've been fortunate. We've had 2 hurricanes come through while the tower's been up, and had a little bit of damage, but nothing that would take us off the air at all. So So that's really the story there. I should also say we've got a high tower up. I've got 3 more coming down, so we're going to put up a 4-square on 80 meters, and we're going to work a little bit on the 160-meter antenna too, because we want to participate in some of those contests.
So, Bill, take us inside the shack. What do you have there for gear?
Okay, well, we started out with a couple of K3s, and as the K3s aged, they wound up spending more time on my radio bench getting fixed than they did contesting. So I bought 2 K4s. Now, I started refitting the shack back in the middle of COVID, and it was very difficult to get even 1 K4. So we had to wait until just last fall to get the second K4, because of the availability. But that's the radios. We've got a KPA 1500 amplifier to pair with the Run 1 station. And I've got a number of Alpha 87As that we use as backup amplifiers in case something happens, and for the second Run station. And the rest is secrets and trinkets that, make this station good.
So when you mention Elecraft K4s, obviously there's a phenomenal remote capability with the K4s. Are you operating remote?
The K4 remote part isn't out yet to the public. Okay, it will be, as a native remote device. There are tricks that you can use in order to use a K4, but I haven't been using it that way. And quite frankly, we would only be able to do that on the property. The way the laws are written down on St. Lucia, you cannot do remote operation, because you always have to have the main operator at the transmitter while it's transmitting. What that would mean for a remote operation is that if someone wanted to operate my radio, I would have to be here and sitting at the transmitter as they're actually, DXing or contesting or whatever they're doing.
So, Bill, as you know, I'm relatively new back into the hobby, a couple of years. That sounds unusual. I guess I haven't heard of any other Caribbean country that has that sort of regulation that you can't operate remote. Is that more commonplace than I would think?
No, it's not that common. There are only 2 or 3 Caribbean islands that have that policy in place, and they're all under the CARICOM, the NTRCs that are down here. I haven't really explored that option myself for any of the other Caribbean islands that do or don't allow it. I've always operated contest, being there. I think there's a lot of subtleties you miss by remote operations, even though a lot of people do it, and it's very common. And I think it is the wave of the future as the technology gets better and better for doing remotes. But I personally, I miss something when I'm not there at the contest station. And certainly, when it's my station, I really have to be here because stuff happens, things break, and in fact, in this last contest, we had something break in the middle of the night. We had an amplifier go offline, and it was simply taking the cover off and pushing some chips back into the sockets, to make contact again, because of the salt air that's down here. It kind of corrodes the contacts, but you still have to do those things. So you have to take that into consideration. Somebody needs to be on site at these remote stations in order to make sure that they work.
Well, Bill, let's get into your contesting. What you prefer. I do have a sense that you operate in all the majors. I mean, you're obviously an experienced contester, and my sense is that you prefer multi-op.
I started out, probably back in the 70s as a new ham and operated just as a single op, single station, single op, single transmitter. Things like sweepstakes, and those sorts of contests. I've graduated as time goes on to more sophisticated contesting. I've been at PJ2T, and generally they run multi. I've been K9SD, we did multi-2 and multi-single. And, some of the other contests that I've been to, I've been in all of them, multi-single, multi-2, and multi-multi, both high and low power. My favorite is probably the multi-2 now. We used to do just multi-single until just the last 2 years here. We did that because, the ergonomics are a little bit tight. Right now, we have to set up all the equipment inside the main villa to run the contest, to operate for them. And it takes a lot of effort in order to set all the radio equipment up, and then at the end, tear it all down, put it all away. But there's something about having that rivalry with having the extra people there on site, two operators kind of pushing against each other. It's just fantastic. I love being in that sort of an environment. And we do a lot of preparation beforehand with the contesting. We sit down and make sure everybody's involved, make sure everybody understands how the propagation is going to work, how the operators will fit into the contest program and all of that. It's quite sophisticated.
Well, Bill, maybe specifically, could you talk about this past WPX weekend and how you organized that and who operated with you and maybe what your strategy was going in?
I've got a team leader, okay, that he's the guy who takes care of the operating team. I find that when I'm doing it, it's too much work being in charge of the team and being in charge of putting the hardware together and making sure it all works, doing all the maintenance. So I've relegated that to Kyle Chavis, WA4PGM. Kyle and I have been contesting together for almost 30 years. And he's a very good contester. He and I are both CW. Well, we're CW and sideband contesters, but really all modes. We've contested both CW and sideband together. Also part of the core team is a guy named Dan Haushauser. He's W0CN. He's operated in a lot of contests over the last 20 years. And, he's a top-notch operator. He's the one that usually brings our rates up. Also, myself, I'm part of the contest, the core contest team, and another guy we brought on from St. Lucia, a guy named Franz Sandbrink, and he's kind of new to contesting, but we've brought him along as time has gone on. So we always ask him to be part of the core contest team. He runs interference between us and the NTRC, which is the licensing body, and make sure all of that stuff is working. We've got all the licenses we need and that sort of thing. Now, in this last contest, we had some newcomers. We brought in a guy named Corey, KB4YBN. He had never contested before outside the United States. So it was a good experience for him to operate down here, see how things felt on the other side of the microphone, so to speak. We had Doug K8DP and his daughter, KE8RJU, a youth operator. And we've started a program here to try and bring youth operators into our contesting, each one of our contests. What we're going to require in the future is an essay, from have them apply, and we'll have them write essays. And I'm working on trying to put together some financial aid so that they can come down here very easily and operate. Grace operating this time, she was absolutely perfect, wonderful addition to our contest group, and I'm hoping to have her back. I know she's contested with the likes of K3LR and some other contest groups. I think she's going back to K3LR this fall for the CQ Worldwide. But that's really how the contest team works and what we look for and what we do.
So, Bill, as I mentioned early on, your station is also available to rent. People can rent the villa, rent the station. Tell me about that. I mean, there must be a certain amount of risk inherent in that, having people use your equipment while you're away. What brought you to that decision?
My wife said, "Hey, you've got all this fancy equipment. You shouldn't keep it in boxes while we're not there." So I started a program where you could, hams could rent the villa, and oh, by the way, you can play ham radio too. Now there are two different types of aspects to that. Of course, one is being here to DX, and the other is being here to be in a contest, right? So, we've taken up some of the good contests. My contest team is we're currently taking some of the space for the good contests like ARRL, DX, and CQ Worldwide, WPX. But there are still some of the other contests that we don't, and there's a lot of room for other types of operators, RIDI operators, FT8 operators, those sorts of things. And we just got introduced to VHF over the weekend, VHF, UHF satellite, and some other things. So I can see expanding this a little bit. Now, for a person to rent, what we do is they will rent our big villa, and I'll set the equipment up ahead of time. I don't leave it out because, for non-hams, that's having that equipment for, as a ham radio operator, that's a little bit of a danger. So I'll typically come down, and I'm down here about every 2 weeks, by the way, just, so here a lot. And I'll set the equipment up, and I'll be off property. We've got another villa down below that I can stay in, and if they have any issues, I can fix that. The first contest that was ever done at the station was done by a renter. It was a group of doctors, and they had a call already, J68MD, and they operated the CQ Worldwide SSB contest in 2019, and they came in 6th place in low power, which was surprising. We had an amplifier problem where the KPA 1500 faulted, and we couldn't get it back working. So they entered in low power, and I think that was actually a benefit for them. They came in 6th place. So anyway, that's how it works. You can find us online. villagrandptown.com is our URL, and we rent on Airbnb and some of the other platforms. And you can rent the place for, my wife usually likes to get between 5 and 7 nights worth of business. And if you want the equipment, we can set the equipment up for you.
So tell me about licensing. So obviously, if I or anyone rented the station, we need to get licensed in, say, Lucia. What does that process look like?
Right. And that's the tough part, because the government on St. Lucia really, they're not really into ham radio licenses, meaning they don't put a lot of priority on it. They do on cell phone licenses and TV and radio down here, but not on ham radio licenses. So what happens is the NTRC, which is our version of the FCC, puts together a working package, which is your license, essentially all of the pieces of paper that go into your license. They send it over to the communication ministry down here, and it'll sit for 6+ months. I've never seen it sit less than 6 months. And what happens is the minister has to initial every page and sign your license. And again, they just don't put priority on it, which is a little bit of a shame. But I've got a backup plan. If people come down here and stay, we've got a couple of calls. We've got a club call, which is J62K. We also, I also have my own call, J68HZ, and I offer, to let people use those calls if they come and their license isn't out of the ministry by then. Okay, so one way or another, you can operate.
Bill, I noticed on your QRZ page a list of suggestions to people that are calling into J68HZ. Could you go through some of that? Because obviously you've clearly thought out how people can best make a contact with your station on St. Lucia.
Yeah, well, some of them are just common sense and right out of the the DX the DX encode, you know, and it's simple stuff like if I put out QRZ or something like 9LT and I let off, I don't expect to hear any other letters in a call sign other than 9LT. Okay, simple stuff like that. Just be patient. While I'm giving a report and listening for my report back, please don't transmit on top of me. It'll make it go much faster for everybody if we just kind of stick to those sorts of common sense things. Okay, there's a number of other things out there too. Don't think you're the loudest station on the planet. Meaning, if I haven't worked you in a pileup, that doesn't mean that you're 20 over S9. It could be that you're hearing me fine, but the propagation is such that you're barely audible. So just be patient and keep working. If you've worked me before, stay out of the pileup. Let somebody else work me. If you've already got a card or had a QSO, confirmed QSO, stay out of the pileup.
I guess what I would say to that, Bill, I agree that they are simple, but the fact that you had to even list them on your QRZ page tells me that you encounter them a lot. And as someone who just came back from St. Vincent, where I operated, relatively low power portable station, had a K3 and I was running a KPA 500, so maybe around 400 watts, but only using a wire in the backyard. I didn't have a big signal. So when people in pileups aren't paying attention, it's really hard because people were stepping on me as I was responding, and then I have to repeat an exchange over and over again, sometimes 2 or 3 times. Finally started operating split in order to get away from it. But I do think that you putting that on your QRZ page underscores a point that we could all be better operators, and if we're all better operators, then clearly more people get in the log. It's as simple as that.
Well, exactly. And there are some, as you probably found out from a power standpoint, if you turn your power up, more people can hear you, but that's not always a blessing because it means they're calling, and maybe you can hear them, maybe you can't. And if you turn the power down, now you've got loud stations calling back, and you're getting covered up by the people calling. So kind of a double-edged sword there. You just kind of have to work through that. And you're right, bringing up operating split. I do that a lot when I'm just DXing on any mode, just because it sort of clears the frequency up, and you have a lot less people calling and covering each other up, making it difficult for everybody else. And of course, the flip side of that is you get people call on your calling frequency.
Well, Bill, I appreciate you taking time again from your time away in St. Lucia. Really happy that you took my call a couple of days ago, and glad that we were able to have this conversation. And I'm sure we're going to be having more conversations in the future. As I mentioned the other day, I have been to St. Lucia, and I see another trip in my future.
Great. Yeah, stop by when you're here. Love to have you. We'll get you behind a microphone or a key.
Thank you, Bill. I appreciate it. I've been talking to Dr. Bill Schmidt, who is in St. Lucia. You may have put him in your log this past weekend as J62K. He's also operating as J68HZ. Have a great day, Bill.
Thank you. Thanks, Kevin.